Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you kids, it's a fucking jungle out there. Keep your head on tight, unknown brain and mind me, baby, let's do it. Y'all see me flying, never drop down, smoking high, I am not round, I'm not round, no denying what I got now, keep an eye out, keep it locked down, see me flying, never drop down, smoking high, I am not round, I'm not round, no denying what I got now, keep an eye out, keep it locked down, get too strong when I battle with the beast, bring a few on, the commander and the chief for my crew on, bullets rattling and whistle at your toque, never sleep, eyes open, hands clutching on my loop, it's a war zone. It's a war zone. Yo, this a motherfucking war zone. It's a war zone. Feel the impact, yeah, break it open, leaving nothing fucking intact. Hey yo, you been hacked, you're safe hiding, but I found it, homie, been cracked. Hey yo, we been back, your band stacking, see you flexing with the thin stack. Hey bitch, you been whacked, I kill them all, feel the motherfucking impact. Yo, this a war zone, homie, say you ready and prepared. Take a minute, make them aware. Well, I be sneaking in the back, but it's squad that clap, homie, life ain't fair. Caught me crawling through the mud with a vision, saw it clearly. Born a shepherd to these sheep, make them fear me. This a war zone, trenched out, trap house, nothing ever given. Yeah, every day's a blessing, thank the Lord, oh how I'm living. See me riding with my top down, oh cops round, pedal pressing on the gas. I don't think I'll ever stop.
We lost our minds in the darkness of night. We live to die. We lose our souls every day. We lost our minds. We don't remember what's wrong and what's right. The world is dead but we stay. 'Cause we are born as living fights. We live to die. We live to die. Surrounded by the night, we live to die. We are shadows in the neon light. We are shadows in the neon light. We are just shadows. It's supposed to be that we die. It doesn't matter. Get you one more time. I really wanna cross the line. I do it all before I die. I wanna get it on.
Participants so far in our call. So hopefully more of those who registered will arrive. For the rest of the ones in YouTube, hello again. Good evening. My name is Pierce Honota. I'm one of the community leads for the Philippine Web Designers Organization, and welcome to Remote Form Function Class Enhanced Work from Home. So this is our first remote meetup, and it's a collaboration between User Experience Philippines, or also known as UXPH, as well as the Philippine Web Designers Organization. So both of these communities have been struggling with the crisis that we're having now, that's known as COVID, but we're still we still have that drive and that passion on helping out others on how to boost their design skills, their work skills, and eventually we then had to be able to brainstorm that, "Oh, okay, so everyone's in a remote setup and working from home, so why not learn more about how to work from home while everyone's still at home?" So again, welcome to Enhanced Work from Home. So before anything else, let's check on with our chat so far in the Zoom call. So uh, all right, so there's someone sharing the ICQ numbers, but yeah, so Link TV, Auntie mode. Okay, so uh everyone's getting fun over here. So okay, hello there from Lindsay as well as RT Lopez. Good evening. Maybe before we start, so we're having this remote meetup by also partnering with our partner. So it's Frontline Feeders Philippines. So we're also sending our help to our frontliners by providing them honor, respect, and gratitude through food. So if you want to learn more about how to help them out, so we'll give you instructions later. But before we start over with the rest of the event, I'll be sharing over the floor to Kringle Garcia to introduce us to User Experience Philippines.
Hey, hi guys. Good evening. Ayan. Okay. So, good evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing fine. So my name is Kringle. I'm currently the head of the volunteers for UXPH. So, welcome to this meetup. So I'm glad that you guys are all here. Hello. Yes, I need to speak in English. Good job. So anyway, so
Hello.
hi. So I guess just a short background about UXPH. I'm not sure if everyone's aware of our organization, but so far we're the largest and most active UX organization in the country. So our mission is basically to grow and nurture the Filipino creative community through sharing and collaboration. That's why we have a number of activities throughout the year. First of which are these monthly meetups. It's usually sponsored by us, but sometimes we have these special events just like this one, wherein we're partnered with different communities. So for this time, it's with PWDO. So thank you so much for having us with you, PWDO people. And then so it's also free. So we're also hoping that you guys are able to join us in our upcoming activities and learn with us monthly. Aside from our monthly meetups, we actually also have annual conferences. We're hoping that we'll still be able to do so this year given our whole situation, or if not physically, then maybe an online thing. But UXPH has been holding annual conferences. So last year we actually branched out, not just here in Manila, but we also held conferences in Davao and in Cebu. And then moving forward, we're also planning to reach out to more areas so that we could continue to spread awareness about UX and really grow our community, grow our design community, so that all of us would really be able to be trained to build mindfully and sustainable products and services. So if you're able to attend the conferences, it's great because it's a good gathering of designers, of developers, product managers. I think also even business analysts every now and then. So it's a pretty good mix. And you'll be able to learn from our UX experts and thought leaders, not just here in the nation, but also even abroad. So basically, that's our short introduction about UXPH. I hope you learned a little bit more about us. For those of you who aren't part yet of our Facebook group, please do join us. And then, if you're also interested to volunteer with us, I know with the situation it's a bit hard, but maybe later in the year, you could also message us privately about it so that we could include you in our roster. Thank you. That's it. Back to you, Pierce.
Thank you so much, Kringle, for giving us over that introduction to User Experience Philippines. Really been looking up into this organization ever since it started. It's really one of those organizations that I respect over for helping more designers be aware, be learned, and be more open to helping out others and mentoring them in what they can do further. So I'll be sharing over my screen so that I can introduce everyone over to the other collaboration organization here, which is the Philippine Web Designers Organization, or what we call PWDO for short. So as the typical remote meetup worker office person says, can everyone see my screen?
Yeah,
Anyways, right.
now.
Yes. So if you can now see my screen over, so we are part of the Philippine Web Designers Organization. So who are we? So we are Puedo, pronounced as Puedo, in the first person form of poder, which actually means to be able to. So as written. So we are a not-for-profit volunteer group aiming to uplift the local web design community, championing professionalism and excellence in crafting interfaces for the web. So we're mainly all about web design, web development, and almost anything that's tech and career in the technology industry. So we do meetups, we do interdisciplinary learning in different aspects in workshops and roadshows for different demographics and audiences, including students, professionals, and hobbyists. So, in terms of numbers, kind of like doing a report over here. So, we started in September 2008 just because the co founders of Puedo just really wanted to have a web design conference in the country. So, actually, some of the co-founders written over here are in our call as well. So welcome to them. And it's been so many years. I think it's already 12 years since September 2008. So their first event was actually a mini FFC meetup, which was holding six speakers and was a way to promote the actual web design conference that became Form, Function, and Class. 2009, that's when it happened. So planning was held over and worked on by these people, written, and a spin-off event for students happened on 2012, which was then called Junior Form Function and Class. So it's the student or school version of Form Function and Class conference. We've had more than 80 plus events that we've handled. So that includes the mentioned events earlier, form, function, and class, and junior form, function, and class. We've had charity hackathons as well called Karitakathon. We've had meetups, which we call Mini FFC. We've also had our Philippine version of the Code in the Dark, and so much more collaborations with other communities, including this new event that we're calling Remote FFC. So we've had so many speakers over 70 plus across the years. So much collaboration. So there, we've been collaborating with User Experience Philippines even before, as well as both professional organizations and student organizations like UX Society and Tomasino Web, and other partners as well for companies who help us get venues, help us make our events happen. So for our code of conduct and privacy policy, just visit puedo.org/conduct. So this remote FFC that we're having, this also applies as well. So just in case you experience any form of harassment or issues, just let us know that we're enforcing a code of conduct and privacy policy to help you out on that one. We have benefits for those who become members or help us in volunteering with the event. So for members, we have two members. We have the regular and the committee members, and you just have four easy steps to join. So if you want to learn more about this, just visit us over or contact us at info@puedo.org. So that's about it for us at Puedo, and I'll be switching over back to the event slides. Just give me a few moments over here. Anyway, anyone, how's everyone? Let me check over with the chat. I've been seeing, actually, we have a potato joining over us. Hello, potato, in the call. Good evening to you as well, sir. Oh no, where are you? Sir RT Lopez. Welcome to the Big Brother house. Yes, but I'm not Big Brother, so all right. Okay, so the potato is back. All right. So again, so I'll be sharing my screen once more. So I'll proceed over with our beneficiary and partner for for this COVID season. So again, we are partnering with Frontline Feeders. So if you want to help them over, so we'll provide you over with the details later or in the chat as well. If you go up in our chat feed, you'll have instructions over there on how to contact them and provide aid to our mighty frontliners helping us over in this cruel season. So Frontline Feeders Philippines prepares over 1,200 meals daily for more than 20 hospitals in Metro Manila. And any amount is a blessing. So it's really that small step that helps out a lot of people. That small amount could actually grow bigger because just even like 20 pesos or $1, combine it with so many people donating, and then that could help out a lot in providing food for our frontliners. So you could send over your contributions through these payment channels and just DM us or text the number over here, or better yet, you could visit Facebook and search for Frontline Feeders Philippines. So recently, they've just sent over up 51,000 meals, 41 hospitals reached, and 17 cities covered. So that's the amount of help that we've already provided for our frontliners together with Frontline Feeders Philippines. And if you're just curious on how they make it, so they match hospitals and kitchens or sponsors, solicit funds and buy food supplies. They coordinate with logistics and allocate the food deliveries to the frontliner partners that they go on to. So those come in the form of mainly hospitals and other forms of frontliners, including our security guards and other workers. So, how's everyone again? Hopefully, everyone's having a great night. Uh, with the chat, let me get back over to the chat. And how's everyone doing? Lord of the Rings. All right. So, okay, thank you so much. We've had some donations over already. Thank you so much for helping our frontliners. Gavin over here has provided instructions to provide over how to how to donate over for our frontline feeders PH. Yes, so it's through PayPal, debit and credit card, and you could also use the bit.ly/donate dash through dash puedo. Anyways, so much for that. Let me go on and focus ourselves so that we could start the night with our talks. Okay, so for our first talk, we actually have two speakers already. Very great. So for our first talk, so our first speaker will is a firm believer of working on your own time and pace. After 7 years of working from an office-based setup, she now works from home or anywhere with internet as a freelance web developer or designer. And designer, a project manager for a PH-based company, and a senior WordPress developer for a UK-based company. So let's give it up for Drei Alquiros.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very special episode of Remote 101 by PWDO and UXPH. Joke lang. Joke lang. So first off, hello, hi. My name is Dre. And I've been working remotely for almost 3 years. 3 years old on June. Currently, I have three jobs.
A part-time project manager for
a
a
company
Philippines,
here in the Philippines.
a senior WordPress developer for a company in the
And
UK,
I also do
freelance
web
development
design.
and web design.
Yep. So I'm just gonna move my head. There we go.
As you all know, in the past few months,
As you all know, in the
major
past few
pandemic
months,
called
a major pandemic
COVID-19
called
has hit our
COVID-19
planet,
has hit our
causing
planet,
the majority of people,
causing
ones
the
who
majority
can,
of people
to work
the ones who
remotely
can,
for the first time.
to work remotely
So
for the first
upon scrolling
time.
on social media,
So upon
I
scrolling on
observed
social media,
the
I
following.
observed the
So
following.
you feel excited.
First,
You feel
overflowing
with excitement.
overflowing with excitement.
Yes, work from home.
Yes, work
Walang
from
traffic.
home.
Walang commute.
Walang traffic.
Ang
Walang
init sa mukha
commute.
ng face mask habang
Ang init sa mukha ng
nakikipagsiksikan sa MRT. I don't have to do that
nakikipagsiksikan sa
anymore.
MRT.
Work
I
from
don't have to
home.
do that
Yay.
anymore. Work
Grabe,
from home.
sobrang saya.
Yay.
Nung feeling
Grabe, sobrang saya. Nung
mag-work
feeling
from
na
home na kayo na yung company nyo
mag-work from home na
nag-declare
kayo
ng
na
work
yung
from home.
company nyo nag-declare ng work from home.
After a week or 2 weeks,
After a
siguro,
week or 2 weeks,
you
siguro,
start to feel frustrated.
you start to feel frustrated.
And then after another week,
And then
you're
after
getting
another
anxiety
week,
issues.
you're getting
And
anxiety
you're finding
issues.
it more hard.
And you're finding it more
harder
You're
to be
finding it
productive.
harder and harder to be productive.
And then after a month, you feel sad.
After a month,
You feel
lonely,
sad, depressed,
lonely,
stressed,
depressed,
tired,
stressed,
burned out,
tired, Nakakalungkot naman talaga yung situation natin ngayon. Lalo na for extroverts. Nakakabaliw na wala kang kasama. Na wala kang kakausap, na wala kang office mates na kachismisan, ganyan. It's really hard. Even for me, when I started working from home. I'm here to tell you that what you feel is normal. Very normal. Most especially if this is your very first time to work from home or to work remotely. So tonight, I'm going to discuss with you how you can prepare yourself and stay focused also. So our agenda tonight is preparing yourself and then staying focused and then some bonus tips. So first is preparing yourself. I'm going to move my head again. Okay. So the very first thing you need to do before you start preparing yourself is to prepare the people around you. So if you live with your family, with your board mates, with your friends, you need to prepare them first. So you need to communicate and let them know that in the next few days you will be working from home. You'll have a schedule, ganyan. So this prevents them from bugging you, from talking to you all the time, from giving you chores, mga ganon. And then you make them understand. In my past experience, when you live with your family, sometimes it's so hard to make them understand. Super hard. Dear parents, if you're watching, I'm sorry, but it's super hard. You have to repeat it to them several times na, yes, I am in front of my computer the whole day. Yes, I don't go outside the room the whole day. Yes, I don't help from this time to this time. But I'm not playing around in my computer the whole day. I'm working. I'm helping companies and clients fulfill their needs. Diba? So, you just have to make them understand kahit nakaka-stress minsan na paulit-ulit. And next, you have to discuss your work hours with them. So, if you live with your family, syempre hindi ka makakatakas from doing chores. Sobrang inevitable na makatakas ka from doing chores. So, you have to discuss with them that ganitong oras ako mag-work. So, mga ganitong oras, pwede mo na akong utusan. Pero pag ganitong oras, nag-work ako. Just have to make them understand. Over-communicate with them. Next, so you set up your work area. It's one of the most important things. If you search for articles online on basic remote working or how to start remote working, the very first thing that it's going to say is that you have to set up your work area. You have to find a spot in your house or in your apartment or in your condo where you can set up your workspace. And then you have to make sure to include everything that you need to be productive. So include all the equipment you need. So your extended monitor, your earphones, your extension cord, your charger. What do we have here? Your Bluetooth mouse, your vape, your water, your vape juice, mosquito repellent, rosary, I don't know why, and I don't know, your phone. Yeah, so basically just everything that you need to be productive. Make sure that it's already there. And then next is you have to make sure that you have a table and a chair. So your first question that pops into your mind, what if I don't have a table and a chair available? So you find a way to get a table and a chair. So most probably you have a dining table or a kitchen counter, mga ganon. So set up there. Hindi naman buong araw may kakain sa dining table or sa counter. So pwede kang mag-set up doon. And then tabi mo na lang kapag may kakain na, then balik ka na lang ulit. Ganyan. So you have to find a way. Nasa table and chair ka magtatrabaho. Okay. Don't work on your couch, on your bed, and most especially do not work in front of your TV. Yeah. Working on your couch, on your bed, will make you feel like you're more at home. So it's a bit harder to be productive. You might be tempted to take a nap, mga ganon. it will also give you backaches, neck aches, shoulder aches, ganyan. So imagine if you're working on a bed, so usually may unan ka sa likod, so medyo nakaslant yung katawan mo. Then your laptop is on your lap, so ganyan ka. Ganun. So after working a couple of hours pa lang, sakit na niyan dito. Ito, masakit na siya. Kailangan mo na ng massage. Bawal tayong lumabas ngayon. Bawal din pumunta yung masahista sa bahay niyo ngayon. So don't do that. And then, don't work in front of the TV because you will be tempted to watch TV. It's the worst kind of temptation. Especially if there are people in your house na, well, for example, your sibling goes to the part of your house where you're working in front of the TV and she starts to watch something that you really, really, really like. You will be tempted. Kahit mag-earphones ka, hindi mo naririnig, pero nakikita mo yung nangyayari, dahil gusto mo nga yung pinapanood niya, magtatanggal ka, kahit isa lang muna yung tatanggalin mo. Eventually, wala na, nakatitig ka na sa TV. Bye-bye work. Ganun. Yeah. Next, you set up your work hours. So you figure out, before that pala, the other day I was scrolling through Facebook and nakita ko ang daming posts na parang work feels like it's gotten longer since we started the work from home scenario. Parang there are more meetings, more backlogs, more emails. My client is texting me at 11 p.m. expecting me to answer them right away. Clients who are PMing me at, I don't know, hours of the day that I'm asleep. Ganun. So, parang naging 24/7 yung operations ng trabaho natin nung nag-start yung work from home scenarios, because most companies here aren't used to this kind of arrangement. So we have to be the one to educate them. We have to be the one to adjust to them. So the first thing you need to do is to figure out your most productive hours. After you do that, you have to figure out, or you have to communicate with your supervisor and your team. And mali yung spelling ng your team yan. So communicate it with your supervisor and your team. And then when you are done for the day, when you're done working, you set your status to offline. If you're using Google Calendar or G Suite, you can set your working hours on Google Calendar para if somebody invites you to a meeting or something at outside your working hours, it's going to notify them that this is outside Dre's working hours. Ganyan. So, they'll expect na hindi ka na pupunta. They'll know na hindi ka na nagtatrabaho ng ganung oras. Ganun. So, at least yun, company-wide, kahit sino mag-invite sa'yo is going to tell them that it's outside your work hours. Ganun. And then if you're using Slack, you can enable your do not disturb hours. So from this time to this time, hindi magno-notify si Slack sa'yo na may message ka, ganyan. And last is you need to maintain your work-life balance. So what everyone needs to understand is that work-life balance should still exist even when you're working from home. Just because you're working from home, just because you're at home and you're working, doesn't mean that it's automatically work-life balance. Napaka-pilosopo po nun kung ganun tayo mag-isip. So you should still be able to separate your work life from your personal life, most especially now that we need to take care of our health even more. So if you overwork yourself, you'll eventually get sick. And if you get sick, it's so scary to go to the hospitals now. So yun. And then when you set up your work hours the right way, I assure you 100%, 101% that you will still have time to do the things that you like. So for example, me, as I mentioned earlier, I have 3 jobs. I have a part-time job, a full-time job, and a freelance job. But I still have time to watch K-dramas with my sister, jamming sessions with my dad, watch the baby, help with this, help with that. Yeah. So just set up your work hours and do it the right way. Next. So our next agenda is staying focused. Okay. So create momentum. So we all have different ways to create momentum. Ikaw lang may kilala sa sarili mo. But this is based on my experience, observations, and opinions. Ganun. So I observed that most developers and designers, nung nag-work ako sa office, most developers and designers, laging naka-earphones. Laging nakikinig sa music. Ganyan. Sometimes companies, they take it the wrong way, that you're always listening to music, like you're unproductive that way. But in reality, we use music to help us create, gain, and maintain momentum. So what I do to create momentum and to just keep it moving forward is I set up playlists. So I create a series of playlists with different durations. And then I don't stop working until one playlist is done. So when I finish one playlist, I take a break, and then I start another playlist. And so on and so on and so on. So pacing din, pacing yourself. So syempre, at the beginning of the day, hindi ka naman super hyped and ready to go to work right away, diba? So my first playlist is only 30 minutes. Then after 30 minutes, I take a 3 to 5 minute break, and then I start with my 60-minute playlist. And then I take a break again, and then I start with my 90-minute playlist. Yeah. Next is to stick with your work hours. So when we prepared ourselves a while ago, we set up our work hours. So now we have to stick with it. We should stick with it and not divert from it. Kasi they say that it takes like a few weeks for you to be able to get used to a routine. So hindi ka magiging productive kung sa una pa lang, na-divert mo yung work hours mo. Bakit ka pa nag-set ng work hours mo? Diba? And eventually, kasi if you set a certain time for you to work, pag nasana yung katawan mo na ganung oras ka nag-work, mas madaling mag-gain ng momentum every day. Kasi sanay na yung brain mo na at this time, I'm alive. At this time, I am focused. I'm going to work. I'm going to do this today. Ganyan. And last, for creating momentum, refrain from standing up. This is the worst thing you can do. So, refrain from leaving your work area every 5 minutes. Hindi ko naman sinabing huwag kang tumayo ever. Refrain from leaving your work area every 5 minutes to get stuff, to do unnecessary things. So, kaya kanina din, when we prepared ourselves, the second point was to make sure that everything that you need to be productive is already on your work area, on your workspace. Ganon. Para you don't have to stand up to get things biglaan na, uy, I need ganito pala, ganyan. So, hindi ka tatayo na lang bigla, ganun. So, for example, me, mabilis matuyo yung lalamunan ko. My throat gets dry very easily. So, I always have water beside me. So, usually, kanina puno to. So, I have water para pag nauhaw ako, or pag na-feel ko na medyo dry na yung throat ko while I'm working, I don't have to go outside the room, go downstairs, get a glass, get water from the refrigerator, and then come back up. So it's just parang standing up and doing something else, napuputol yung momentum. So either mapuputol yung momentum mo pag tumayo ka, tapos pag hindi ka naman tumayo, because for example ako, nauuhaw ako, pag hindi naman ako tumayo, sore throat ang abot nito. And ayoko ding magka-sore throat kasi nakakatakot magka-sore throat ngayon, guys. Yeah. So refrain from standing up. Next, take breaks. I know it's a little bit of ironic that you have to take breaks to be able to feel productive or to gain focus, diba? But taking breaks are actually healthy. But you have to remember to take the right kind of breaks. So the right kind of breaks meaning there's a wrong kind. So the wrong kind of break is that you work for 30 minutes and then you take an hour break. That's the wrong kind of break. That's it's not balanced. You know? So have 5 to 15-minute breaks every 60 to 90 minutes of work. So according to Scientific American, our brains are mostly preoccupied with work. So in an average, every year, most of the majority of the things that we think about is work. Work talaga. Work. And throughout history, many people have discovered na just because you are so devoted to your work doesn't mean that you are more productive than those who work less times or those who take more breaks. You know? So when you take your break, you stretch, you walk around, you stare into blank space, you do whatever, etc. Um, this enhances your productivity because it allows your brain to reboot And then your eyes also needs to rest. Kasi, um, sample, usually developer, designer, you have 2 screens. Some have 4 screens. I think the most I've seen is 4 screens. So, imagine, nakatingin ka dito for an hour, tapos titingin ka doon, tapos may screen ka dito, tapos may screen ka dito, tapos babalik ka dito. Diba nakakabaliw yun? Yung feeling nung mata mo na sobrang na-strain niya. Parang yung feeling na, it feels like you drove from Metro Manila to Ilocos without stopping over. And in the nighttime where all the counterflow lights are in your face. So you need to let your eyes rest. You need to let your eyes rest and you need to let your brain reboot. Next is you don't go on naps in between your work hours. Ako, I don't believe in naps. I used to. I used to believe in naps. I used to believe in naps until I realized that sometimes when I use my 15-minute break to take a nap, I am either more tired than I was before I took my nap, or I'm not in the mood to work anymore when I wake up. I just want to lie down. Ganon. So, naps are an indication kasi that you didn't get enough sleep or you're working too much, that your brain and your body can no longer process simple information. Yeah, so what you need to do to fix this is you need to fix your body clock, get your work hours right, and I promise you, you won't need naps. So, for example, this is how I live now. Recently, pinagbawalan ako mag-coffee. I'm not allowed to drink coffee. So, I had to train my body to not look for coffee when I'm sleepy. So, imagine, as I mentioned nga before, I have 3 jobs and I'm able to survive my day without coffee or naps. So, kaya ko. Siyempre, kaya nyo din. I believe in you. Yeah. Okay. Our last point for staying focused is to refrain from ranting while working. Why? Why do you need to? When you get demotivated, you lose focus, your momentum dies. But why? Ranting makes me release my stress. You know, I have to release my stress or else sasabog ako, mga ganong feeling. Yeah, right? You're allowed to rant, but not while you're working. You can rant before you start working or after you work. Diba? Or while you're on your break, you can rant, but don't do it like in between your focus hours, your momentum hours, ganun. Because ranting causes you to get demotivated. It makes you more tired and unwilling to continue working. And then you also lose focus on the importance of what you do, on the importance of the things you do for your company or your clients, ganyan. Your work becomes intolerable and you get more burned out and stressed in the end. Your momentum dies kasi syempre, mapuputol yung focus mo. So, mapuputol din yung momentum mo. And you're going to have a hard time going back. Lalo na if you're right in the middle of it and you stop kasi naiinis ka. So, you rant it out. Tapusin mo muna yung kailangan mong gawin. When you're done with that, saka mo siya i-rant out. You'll feel better. Kasi hindi naputol yung momentum mo. Also, hindi ka magkaka-backlog. Hindi mo siya kailangan habulin the next day na naputol yung trabaho ko kasi nabuisit ako. Ganun. Tapusin mo muna yung trabaho mo. Saka ka mabuisit. Mas effective yun. And then, on regular circumstances naman, yes, we are allowed to rant before or after work. Ganun. Pero, these are not regular circumstances as we are experiencing this pandemic. So, think of it this way. We have no right to rant because we are safely working from home. And there are thousands of frontliners out there who have to leave their house every day and face this virus on a daily basis. So when you feel tired, when your workload feels too heavy, when you feel burned out or stressed, I think of the thousands of frontliners out there who are required to go out of their homes, who are saving lives, some of them are dying, 'di ba? It's sad. It's very sad. So ngayon ako parang I've learned not to rant at all. Siguro if I have rants, sobrang liliit lang niya. Sobrang maliit na bagay lang siya, ganun na it just passes away. Kasi yeah, these people, they're so dedicated to what they do. and they have to do it outside, and they have to do it so dangerously. And also, other people don't have jobs anymore. So much people lost their jobs. So we're lucky to still have jobs. That's what you think of when you start feeling stressed, burnt out, frustrated, lost, sad, depressed, ganon. You still have a job. Okay, so bonus tips. Okay, this one, I repeated this one like so much times na, but I'm going to repeat it again for emphasis. So, get everything you need before you start working. So whether it's your coffee, your charger, earphones, etc., get it ready and in your workspace before you start getting in the zone. Again, this lessens your need to stand up in between working. Kasi nga, if you keep standing up, you lose focus. And then you'll never be able to gain the momentum that you need. Okay. Keep your phone near, but unseen. So it's okay to have your phone beside you while you're working, but make sure that it's tipped over so you don't see it light up. Because it's easy to get tempted when you see notifications flash to your screen. So for example, this your phone, example, it's in a table. Pag nag-notify yan, sunod-sunod yan. Poof, 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 hanggang mapuno yung screen ng phone mo. Ganun. So, if it keeps on lighting up, eventually you will be tempted to hold your phone. So, then start doing whatever with it. Ganyan. So, when your phone is beside you, just make sure that it's nakabaliktad. It's tipped over. Ganyan. Para you don't see. Yeah, some people will say, no, I won't get tempted. Ganyan. Nakaka-tempt siya if makita mo na nag-PM yung girlfriend mo or yung boyfriend mo. Or paano kung nag-PM si crush? Hindi ka talaga mag-reply? Sure ka? I don't think so. Anyways, there. Our third tip is stay in an isolated area of your house. Only if possible. Like if there's really no isolated area in your house, face the wall or pick a corner, then face the corner. So that you don't see people. Because doing this enables you to have less distractions. Especially if you're staying in a house with a lot of people. So for example, me, I'm staying in a house with 4 people, a baby, and 2 dogs. Diba? So this will help you focus more because it eliminates the temptation from other people. So when other people, kasi when they see you, when you're so within their reach or within their grasp, sila mismo natatempt sila na kausapin ka, nakulitin ka, na makapagkwentuhan sa'yo, ganyan-ganyan. So, huwag ka na magpa-tempt. Huwag mo na din silang i-tempt. Isolate yourself. And last but not the least, don't forget to have fun. So, just like being in an office and having fun with your office mates, learn to have fun on your own. Studies show that when you're happy, when you're having fun, you're more productive. So, sing, dance, make faces, or do whatever you want that makes you happy. So, I promise this helps with the stress level at the end of the day. It also helps you be less burned out, less overworked kasi nag-enjoy ka naman sa shift mo, diba? So I'd like to thank these guys for helping me create my slides for you guys tonight. And that's about it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you learned a thing or two and you'll be able to apply it in the next few days or months, whatever. So if you want to know more about remote work, I blog about it in my website. It's called digitalwayfinder.xyz. As for my slides, my notes and my momentum playlists, I'll also be uploading it here. So if you want it, you can just go and check it out. Yeah. So thank you again. Don't forget to wash your. Okay. So I have just received word that our good friend Ferds is ready to talk to you guys also about how you're supposed to adjust to remote work when you have unstable internet connection. So I'll be forwarding you guys to her once I'm done with my last line because I was interrupted. So again, thank you. I hope you learned something, and please, please, please don't forget to wash your hands. Now, go Ferds.
Kind of got ahead of me already in introducing our next speaker. So let's go on with Ferdenee, Mempin, or Ferds.
Today we're gonna talk about remote work 101. This is my part for the PWDO Mini FFC for this March. Yeah, it is March. For my part in the remote work 101, I'll be sharing some tips that I hope can be of use to you, especially if you are experiencing difficulty with internet connection. For context, my name is Ferds. I've been a designer for 5 to 6 years now with an experience ranging from making apps, websites, and other products or campaigns. For a brief explanation, remote work is time spent on a job or task outside of a common area but with the same delivery and deadline as a team. Today, we're gonna talk about remote work 101. This is my part for the PWDO Mini FFC for this March. Yeah, it is March. For my part in the remote work 101, I'll be sharing some tips that I hope can be of use to you, especially if you are experiencing difficulty with internet connection. For context, my name is Ferds. I've been a designer for 5 to 6 years now with an experience ranging from making apps, websites, and other products or campaigns. For a brief explanation, remote work is time spent on a job or task outside of a common area but with the same delivery and deadline as a team. So I'll be classifying internet connection into two types. First is non to unstable, and the second is stable. What else? For people with non or unstable connection, here is my first tip. Asynchronous communication. If you got unstable to no connection at home or wherever you decided to work from home from, be sure that your team is aware of your limitations. Just set up an hour 2 to 3 times a week to be able to receive or give updates about your task and you're good to go. During these times, I usually use my phone data. I use prepaid services to be able to chat with the team and make it through a week. Other services you can use are computer rentals, public Wi-Fi. Usually I use cafes. If these options are not available to you, I suggest talking with a friend who has a connection at their place and set up a process where you can just repay them later on. Tip number 2. Work locally. If you have files and software that rely on internet connection, be sure to use functions like edit offline and setting up a desktop app for your drive so it automatically just syncs whenever your internet stabilizes. Aside from this, make sure that you set up a time in the day before you start work, preferably, to be able to make sure that every other document you are currently working on is updated so you can work smoothly for the rest of the day. And lastly, tip number 3. Over communicate. Try to maintain or create rapport with your team whenever you are online. Share the details of your process or self-reflection while you were working with your task or project. You may consider this as irrelevant, but this is actually a psychological bias called the narrative bias. Giving details like how you felt, the blockers that you experience, and how you overcome them actually tricks the brain into making the moments that you share with your team more memorable and realistic. So that's it for me. I hope
Dre and Ferds. Hi, Dre. Hi, Ferds. Could you hear me?
Hello.
Hey. Yes, so our speakers are also here with us tonight. So, Dre and Ferds, it's been how many weeks have we been over since the community quarantine? It's been
3 weeks.
around 3 weeks.
Three
Oh my.
weeks.
So, it's more than a sprint already. Anyways, prior to the community quarantine, have you actually already had extended periods, like 3 weeks or more of remote work?
For me, yes. As mentioned in my talk earlier, I've been working from home for almost 3 years now. But this is my very first time to work from home and not be allowed to leave the house.
Not be allowed to leave the house. Is this really more of because there's the community quarantine, COVID,
Yeah,
or
it's because of the community quarantine. And I'm not in Manila. For everyone's info, I'm in Quezon province, and it's very strict here. We're on total lockdown. We're not allowed to leave the house at all. We're allowed to leave the house, but parang it's segregated into different barangays. So certain barangays have certain days. So we're only allowed to leave the
mm,
house once a week, and then from a certain time to a certain time. Like for example, where I am exactly, we're only allowed to leave the house every Mondays from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. After that, bawal na.
oh my. All right, that's kind of harsh, but well, we're doing everything that we can to
Yeah.
avoid COVID in this cruel season. How about you, Ferds?
Hi, what was the question
Yeah,
again?
again.
Yeah.
So for the question, so prior to this COVID season, have you actually had experience working for an extended period remotely or from home?
I guess yes, but yeah, same with Ray. This is the first time that I'm not allowed to leave home. Yeah, so majorly, yeah, the same with Ray.
Same with Jay. All right. Um, with both of the tips you shared, most of those are actually really good, actually, because for me, for example, I always lose track of time, and I usually realize that, oh, okay, wait, it's already night and I'm still working. So maybe that thinking or mindset that if you leave a specific like location, you know that you're going outside that working bounds. So I guess in I guess with the tips that you mentioned, certain people have certain house setups. Like for example, other people would have shared bedrooms. Others would have them working outside their bedrooms, just in case, for example, other people would be using their bedrooms. So I guess on your experience, how would you provide tips for them, those with not having a dedicated setup, or do you think they should have a dedicated setup in their houses? Maybe we could
Um,
start with Dre. Yes.
uh, Siguro for now, since the work from home scenario naman is not permanent, and if you're not really permanently working from home, then I don't think you need a dedicated space. But um, it's so like I said nga, sa slides, it's important to have a table and a chair. So you can move around your house. Like if magsawa ka sa scenery ng side ng house mo, you can move to the front of your house. Ganyan. Basta you're in a table and a chair, you're not in front of the TV, you're not lying down. Ganun. You, yeah. Actually, I invaded my sister's room because I don't live in this house anymore. I live in Manila. I'm just here for the lockdown, the enhanced quarantine. So I invaded my sister's room, and every time I have a call or I'm doing something na I don't want to be bothered, I lock the doors and then I put a huge "Do Not Disturb" sign at the doors. Yeah.
So it's really more of locking yourself in your room and then don't bother me, everyone.
Yeah, and yeah, like I said then earlier, isolate yourself. If you can't isolate yourself, there's no room available, face the wall or stand in the corner, ganun. Para lang you don't
Right.
see the people walking around kasi minsan nakaka-distract na may biglang gaganon sa'yo, di ba? There.
How about Ferds? Or like, how is your house set up when you work?
Okay, so for my setup, I don't think I have that problem because I have my own room and it's fully equipped for homework. Kumbaga, the whole setup is prep for really long weekends and stuff like that. Working on my own space. But for the question though, for people who are having a hard time with without having their own space, there is gonna be two types of answers. One is if the quarantine is temporary or it's gonna be prolonged, or the other one is you are working from home for a particular job or a client or uh, for as an occupation generally. So if it is temporary, I'd suggest what Dre did say, that you just find a space in your room, especially if you don't have a room. Just find a space in your house that you could just face a wall, just so you won't be able to see distractions. But on the other hand, if it is gonna be for a long term, yeah, I'd suggest clearing out a space in your house. And if you can't do that, if the COVID season is gone, finding alternatives from working from your home so to maybe another space. It either can be a friend's house or cafes and other stuff, because the risk here is if you can't concentrate with your work, you can't deliver at your best. So that's what suffers from working from home generally. So what you're pressured to do is find the space just for you to be able to work at your best.
Right. Thank you so much. So maybe we could get back over with our mentee, and let me check it over once again. All right, so we actually now have questions for our Mentimeter. So, for our first question, oh, oops, let me refresh that back again. So, one of the questions here says, what do you guys think about segmented schedule and sleep, like 4 hours of sleep each? Dre or Ferds, you could start either.
Mm, siguro it depends on the person. It depends on you. Like for me, it's not gonna work because I can't do 4 hours of sleep only. 4 hours of sleep. Like my minimum is 6 hours of sleep. Sometimes it's 12 hours of sleep. So yeah. So I think it depends on you. If you have enough discipline to do 4 hours of sleep and then 4 hours of work, then you can try it. But yeah, for me it's not gonna work.
How about Ferds? What do you think about this segmented schedule and sleep?
Uh, what do you mean by a segmented schedule? Like,
It says
my
here
shifts are
like
different.
4 hours of sleep each. So I
Okay.
how I'm seeing it is maybe our asker meant that it's more of a you break your sleep schedules or your working schedules. Like for example, you could say 8 hours, you could go 2 hours and then you could do a break and then continue the rest of the hours at the
Mm,
third time.
okay, I got it. For that, what you're trying to say generally means your BPT or biological prime time. So, the answer to that is find for yourself for a week, just try to map out we when is the best time in the day you are most productive, because that's going to be different for a whole lot of people. So some people are comfortable with segmented schedule, so working and then sleep and then working again. For me, I have the whole 8 hours that I have to be active, so it's kind of required. So it really depends on people. So the general advice is find your biological prime time. So that's when you are most productive. And then typically the tip goes with the book Productivity by Chris Bailey. Try to search it out if you get interested, or if you don't have time, try to YouTube it. So afterwards is trying to communicate it back to the team, because as usual, as working from home is it is always reliant on the rest of your team. So if that segmented schedule is uh, goes well with your team, that's fine. But if you are required to be available for the required 8 hours, 9 hours you are at work, that isn't really something that is advisable, because people are gonna look for you during the times you are asleep. So yeah, so the advice is gonna be really different depending on people's circumstances. So to recap, just my tip is just find your biological prime time and then uh, work on those schedules, because that's when you are most productive.
Right. So it's really more of what works for you, is it? So finding your biological prime time. All right. I guess maybe that's enough for our questions so far. But maybe before we continue, so just to update everyone, we actually now have a, not sure totally, but we now have a total of 3,000 pesos donated over for our Frontline Feeders Philippines. So thank you so much for our uh, to our donors. Will pretty much our frontliners would thank you enough with the food that they'll get over from our partner Frontline Feeders Philippines. So keep it up ongoing as well as for our questions in menti.com. All right. So for our next speaker, so our next speaker is a UX designer and researcher from Manila and loves obsessing about design problems. Currently a senior product designer at Caliber, leading the product design team. He is also an active design architect. He is also active in writing design articles in Medium and has been a speaker in several events, even PWDO events actually, like form function in class, junior form function in class, and actually conferences as well by UXPH. And our speaker also has this passion for helping the local tech community and spends a lot of time with advocacies in human rights and public health. So let's give it up for Mark Lacsamana.
Hello and good evening from wherever you are and however you're doing. I hope you are safe. So, I guess all I can say is welcome back to my channel. Hi, how are ya? Joking. So, again, it's been a very tough time for a lot of us here who have been working in the tech industry. Not a lot of us expected that we've ever had to do this by force, but I'm here to help discuss how we can actually work more effectively as remote teams. Not a lot of us expected that this would happen to us by force, and not a lot of us expected this. Not a lot of us were able to prepare. Not a lot of our companies were able to prepare as well. But I'm here to at least give you some tips, some tricks, and maybe a little bit of a little bit of ideas on how you can work more effectively with your teams while we're all stuck here in the end of at the end of the world. So sit back, relax, and we'll go through. So let's start the presentation. So this is basically, oops, there we go. This is basically working effectively as remote teams. So my name is Mark Lacsamana. And as many of you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and it's interestingly because everybody keeps talking about digital transformation, whatever that means. And oddly enough, the person who ended up the person who ended up actually doing digital transformation around the world is none other than Miss Rona herself, COVID-19. So props to you, Miss Rona. You did what every CTO and CEO failed to actually do: force everyone to digitally transform. Pardon my dry sense of humor, but let's move on. So enough about me. I'm Mark Lacsamana, and I am senior product designer at Caliber, and by default, I actually lead the product design team. Um, we at Caliber actually do a one. Ever since I started, we do a once per week work from home kind of arrangement, where every week we make sure that we make Fridays a work anywhere day. It used to be Wednesdays actually, so me and Alex used to actually work together, and we'd work anywhere. Most of the times we'd end up working in some co-working space in Katipunan just because we miss it. But yeah, working remote is not essentially new to me. My first job was actually working remotely or working from home as a senior web designer for a pretty shady SEO company. But I digress. Um, this whole issue actually affected us quite recently as well. We weren't able to what they call this, to prepare for it quite as much as we thought we could, um, because it wasn't something that was in the plan right away, but it was something we were looking forward to actually moving into as time went on. So the first thing you need to know when you're working with a remote team is you need to have the right tools. You need to have the right arsenal for the things that you might have to do. Um, and when I say about, it's not just about the right tools. It's not just about the tools, but it's about the people using those tools. So whenever you are stuck in this kind of environment, it's important to ask the people that you're working with what tools would they actually prefer. Because it's not just about you, Henny. It's about everyone else. You might have a, a 20 gigabyte internet at home, but maybe your teammates might not. So you might not be able to actually like completely work on Figma all the time, and etc. But you have to make sure at least that you are able to ask their team what could be best for their context. ask them what would best fit their needs, and so that you can find a good middle ground for all of you. Remember that collaboration is not about cooperation, it's about actually finding a third option that could actually satisfy all your needs. Next, time and limitations are a big thing when you're working from home. So calendar invites are super important. Um, Scheduling is super important. I have this friend who is actually poly. I don't know if any of you would understand what that means, but being polyamorous, people think that being poly means you just have parties all day. Um, but reality is, being poly, according to her, it means a shared Google Calendar for everyone and Google calendaring dates for everyone. And that's essentially what it's like to be working with a remote team. You actually have to schedule and calendar everything because it's super important to respect people's time and schedule things properly. Prep time will be more important than ever, and making sure that you schedule things ahead of time gives people leeway and actually gives people time to actually prepare for whatever is needed. You can't essentially like just end up creating a remote design sprint without some prep work beforehand. You have to tell people that you're going to have a design sprint on this day, and they'll probably need like a few days before that to actually get things ready so that they come to the remote design sprint ready as well. Some things that have been super helpful. Google Calendar is actually something that's widely used. My mother, who works for the WHO, they're using Outlook and Microsoft 360. So they've been coordinating things through Outlook's calendar and through their internet. Calendly is super important, especially if you work in HR and if you are handling different kinds of meetings with, like, let's say, remote recruiting, so that you can actually set things up to schedule with, like, let's say, interviews that are coming your way. I've found that Calendly has also been super useful when setting up remote interviews for user testing and user interviews, because you can actually give people or have people book a specific time for the specific interview. Interestingly enough, if your Google Calendar is open or can be viewable to the public, you can actually set up your Google Calendar so that so that people can set up what they call this um, consultation or appointment slots for anyone there who's doing education. It's a lot like your professor giving you consultation hours, actually. And I've set this up for my team, where I usually set up my whole week on the things that needs to be calendared, and then any additional time I have in between, I set up specific uh, with the consultation slots if they need me. And it's actually been very helpful for them, and some of them actually do take the consultation slots if they need like extra feedback for whatever they're working on. For anyone who misses working on Google Inbox, Spark Email is actually very useful as it syncs with Google Calendar, and it actually allows you to set up calendar meetings and sync up calendar invites as well. So next. Um, right now, because we are essentially in tough times, actually, we don't know what might happen tomorrow, what might happen next week. China might invade us by the next couple of months. We have no idea. But it's important to at least give people a sense of safety. And one way to actually give that when they work is actually creating ritual. Um, Creating ritual things that you would do day to day at work, try to do that online. So some interesting things that I've actually seen other people and we've done is this creates a sense of normalcy. So working remotely doesn't mean interactions should decrease. So things like, let's say, you would joke around with your office mates every now and then, um, uh, made a side comment that would be a joke. Those shouldn't actually decrease. In fact, you should find ways for you to have these random interactions, even when you're working remotely. One-on-one shouldn't go up, shouldn't go down. They should probably go up actually as well. This actually um, replaces those individual small little times where, let's say, somebody on your team just taps you on the shoulder and asks you, "Hey, what do you think of this?" One-on-ones actually help create and surface those things up. Um, it's also important that you actually set up ritual around how you work. And working remotely doesn't mean that you're actually not working at all or you're working all the time. It's important that you actually create a start time and an end time to a day. In my case, I always tell the team that I will be completely focused for them from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I also advocated for them to actually create a start day for their day and to make sure that they have an end day. They may choose to work beyond that, but at the very least, make that the end of the day that you don't actually answer questions anymore, unless it's, of course, an entire emergency. And the one rule I learned, at least when I was working in OLX with Mika, is when there's an emergency, people wouldn't chat. They would probably call. So you don't need to be online for that. Um, Again, as I said earlier, non-essential interaction is actually very important. It creates a sense of normalcy and it creates a sense of camaraderie that you're still part of the group, that you're still part of the company, and that your company is still working with you and for you, and at the same time that you are still part of the team. So I found that other people have created things like water cooler chats or channels, or basically trash channels that you can actually send things like what might be a promo for whatever delivery that you might get, or let's say a chat or channel for, like, let's say gaming, etc. Uh, that can actually help create a sense of teamwork or just some casual friendly chats. Um, this helps create a sense that you're still part of the team, that there are still people with you and not just empty bubbles on the screen. An interesting thing that I've seen people do, I talked to a friend who works in a data science consultancy, and when they're working remotely as of the moment, they actually turn on their Zoom chats even when they're not in a meeting. And it's not to actually micromanage, it's just to make sure that they see other people, and so that they have a sense of, oh, this is what the office is looking like, oh, this is what other people are looking like, so that they know that somebody's there with them trudging through, so that they have someone to hold their hand digitally, safe 6 feet away in this social distancing times and the end of the universe. But yeah, it's important that that you actually create that non-essential interaction, even with the idea of remote work. It's also important to figure that the art of the start is actually very important. Use video chats and conference calls to your advantage, and use them specifically for the things that need to be a video call or a conference call. Start the week with a kickoff so that everyone knows, can get excited, and everyone sees everyone who's working on a project, so that it actually makes things more human. That people are relying on you, and you can rely on other people as well. So it creates a sense of normalcy again, that you are still part of a group. Be transparent and communicate well. I found that making collaborative documents and creating deadlines for those documents and communicating those carefully is actually very useful. Things that there are things that are best to not be on chat, that you can actually put it into writing. So it's actually useful to have things like Notion, Basecamp, and Confluence to make sure that you have something to refer to, and that people can actually write down what they need to, their insights that we can share to everyone, and that makes people, what they call this, be on the same page. Let's say it's also important that you put deadlines for this so that people can actually set up their days around it, so that you aren't constantly waiting around for people to actually put in their insights or their feedback. Another thing that's important when you're working remotely and when you're working with remote teams is to respect people's time. Time is spent no matter what, whether you are chatting on a non-essential chat or chatting about specific things on a specific project. Time spent in chat is cognitive load taken away from other focus time that they could need. So you need to actually be respectful of somebody's time. This is why calendaring and scheduling things is very important. So be careful how you use your chat and channels, actually. Don't flood an essential channel with things that you just want to share, etc. create a specific chat for things like sharing and learning that you may end up flooding other channels with. Create other chats for things that you want to be able to have better conversations with, so that specific channels for specific things don't become flooded, so that people can actually be more efficient and spend their days and their time at home the most efficiently and the best way that they can do, best way that they can. Some last minute reminders about actually working remotely. Understand that everyone is new to this, so things will mix. Your work life and your personal life will mix. It's something that we have to live with. It's not something that we have to live with completely forever, but understand that it will actually be hard at first. So be considerate. Um, you will have, like, let's say, mothers who have to to oversee their kids who are doing homework or schoolwork also in this time of need. So you have to be considerate with them as well. Know when it's time to focus, know when it's time to actually ask them for things. A good way to do this is ask if it's okay to actually jump into a call first through chat before you jump into a call, or even before you even call on mobile. Um, be considerate as well for anyone's situation. Someone might not have had lunch yet. Someone might not have actually anything for lunch, or somebody might have a faulty connection or might not have the best equipment right now to help them out with remote work. You need to be able to actually be considerate of them, because that's the only way you'll be able to work as a team. Know that working remotely doesn't give you doesn't give the authority to make people work all the time. As I said, it's important that you have a start time and an end time, but at the same time, um, it's important to to schedule things ahead so people can prep. Giving people time to prep doesn't mean that this is homework and that this is school. When it's the weekends, it's the weekends. Unless it's super important, don't unless it's super important, give them the leeway. It doesn't give you the authority to make people work all the time again. So give some leeway so that they can actually be with their families, especially because we're at the end of the world, honey. So at least help have them some leeway to actually hug their kids. Again, don't micromanage. When you're working remotely with a remote team, trust is the default, and commitment on the other hand is also just as important. So you need to trust that your teams are working, even in the most brick and mortar and traditional companies that have been forced to work at home. Like, let's say my mom, who works for the WHO, they've actually stopped the whole time in, time out thing. Trust becomes the default. But at the same time, with that trust, make sure that commitment is there and that you follow through with your commitments. Commitment is important in these times of need. So if you're say that you're going to be there, be there. If somebody says that they're going to be there, trust that they're going to be there. And lastly, again, be patient. Things will fail, things will fall off the cracks, especially in this time because the cracks are actually a lot bigger. So be patient. Work through them instead of working against them. It's important to ask people how they're doing. It's important to just keep transparent and ask them and tell them how are you feeling, because these are things that normally would appear on your face when you see each other, but might not be all the time, and especially now that you're working remote. But again, be patient. Again, so that's it for my essential suggestions at working with remote teams. I hope you guys are staying safe. And remember to cleanse and double cleanse. Goodbye.
And seeing that, oh, okay, so it's kind of like how to train your client. Well, really, but again, from what I understood there, it's really more of trusting each other as well as setting the expectations that, oh, okay, yes, we're at home, but yes, we're also doing actual work. There's also this other mentions of client patama or client hits shade edition, or like the client edition of this talk. So well, let's see on what's going to happen there. But again, so far from our audience, just visit over menti.com and use the code 461903 so you could ask over for your questions. For Mark, Mark is actually also here with us in the call, and we have questions over so far. So, going over with our questions. Hi, Mark. Could you hear us? Oh, wow. With that long hair. Nice. All right. Hello, Mark. So let's go over the questions so far. So for the first one, how is the current job market online compared to an office-based job? Which is more competitive?
So interestingly, again, because I work for Caliber, so I actually kind of see this. um, the interesting thing is a lot of people before this have actually, or before COVID, have actually been very apprehensive about having people work from home or work remotely. But now, because they're forced to, people are actually becoming more lenient about doing remote. So I've actually heard people, let's say with disabilities, who have no other means to actually work besides working remotely. Now they find companies are actually more lenient about that. So currently, yes, because of the circumstances, there are a lot more remote jobs, mostly because I mean nobody can actually get out of the house. Um, but I don't know if that's gonna change once we get out of this. But I do hope it actually does change because um, we've actually already, or at least if it's anything that this whole crisis has shown us, that a lot of our work can be done at home and can be done done remotely as well. Um, the sad part is there are some tech jobs that can't be done from home. Example, BPI still runs on COBOL, and that can't be done remotely. So
Right.
props to our developers at BPI, even though their app still kind of sucks, but they're doing the job. They're still frontliners that way. Um, so there is an increase, but at the same time, the sad part, at least with the job market right now, a lot of people have also lost their jobs. A lot of companies and startups have lost funding. VC money and investments have gone down. So that also means there were a lot of retrenchments. So a lot of the jobs that you're seeing now are probably going to be mostly per project or volunteer projects, or they're not essentially completely permanent jobs. However, there are some sliver of hope there. There are companies out there who have completely transitioned to being completely remote. Some big tech companies, example, Automatic, which runs WordPress, Sketch, because I did mention Figma, but I do believe in the Sketch master race. I'm sorry. Sketch is completely remote. Also, Figma is actually completely remote as well, just saying. So, yeah. These companies have actually transitioned to become fully remote even before this. I recently talked to some other companies like PageUp who actually have transition to becoming completely one for certain things, and then they just do things remotely. So it's increasing, and I hope it actually keeps on increasing because not just because we're lazy to get out of the house, but it actually gives opportunities to disabled people. There.
Right. Actually, someone over in our chat also said, apart from automatic, Airbnb is also completely remote. So it seems
Oh,
like a lot
that's
of.
yeah.
Sorry, yeah, Mark, you were
Um,
saying?
interesting thing about Airbnb, yeah, they are completely remote. Though they didn't start out that way, but they do have one of the most
Yeah.
design teams. I don't know what's happening right now with Airbnb though. I think the company is still safe. It's just that a lot of Airbnb owners are basically like losing money.
Oh no. All right. Here's another question again from our audience. So, what tips can you give for those working remotely on night shift for the first time?
So okay. I've never been a night shift person. The only night shift that I do is playing video games. um, but I I am guessing it might be easier because you don't have your mom asking you constantly to wash dishes, or like in my experience, every time I would go down to eat, my mom would always just angrily say, in Tagalog, sorry, bumababa ka lang para kumain, or you only come down to eat. Which of course, because I'm working, right? But at least when you're working on a night shift, nobody's awake. So the I think what I remember, at least from old days when I would trudge through the night for like late night projects, is I would compare. Okay, I know Dre mentioned that you shouldn't be working in front of the TV. But what I do is I normally play some sort of slightly boring podcast or slightly boring um, documentary as white noise. It's very for me. It's very important. White noise is very important to me because it actually helps me to get into the mood. It creates that momentum for me. Not playlists, but I create white noise around me, and that to me makes good white noise. So instead of playing playlists, because this actually creeps me out sometimes, I tend to use documentaries running in the background as white noise. It's just that it's not in front of me. It's usually behind me. So that helps keep me in focus, and it helps me, I don't know, stay in focus and not get creeped out by the fact that I'm working at night in an empty house. um, as well. Another thing as well is I would actually highly suggest to not work in front of your pets, because I've tried that in the first week and I kept on cuddling my dog as well. Especially if you have cats, because they are nocturnal. But yeah, those are my biggest tips. Also, if you're working from home and you're working from a night shift, as Jay said, get your essentials before you start. Like if you need your power drinks, do it at the very start. Like set it up right away before you start, so that you don't take breaks in between and break your momentum as well. So
I,
yeah.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much, Mark. I guess that's most of the most time we have for Q&A. So again, let's give Mark over a warm round of applause. I really appreciate the one when you said white noise. Actually, for me, when I was working on, well, I didn't go on night shift, but at that time I just felt like, okay, I'd rather work at night this time so I could focus. My typical white noise, luckily it was also in the same time where it gets shown, is shopping. I don't know, that random white noise of shopping or just those random products just keeps me awake instead of that blank, or usually if it's movies it gets me what trying to watch over or I get distracted. All right. So again, thank you, Mark, and that's all that we have for now for uh, our mentee questions. So before we take over a quick break, just wanting to know let everyone know that we've reached a total of 30.96% of our goal of having 10,000 worth of donations. So again, thank you so much for those donors that we have so that we could help over our frontliners via Frontline Feeders Philippines. So I'd like to give a shout out over for our donors, Romel G, Ellie, Fish. Oh yeah, Romel G, Ellie, and Fish. Some of them over have donated over 1,000, others over 50 pesos and those things. But then again, it's all about sharing and giving help for our frontliners. So again, thank you so much and keep our donations ongoing for our frontliners. So we'll just take over a 5-minute break and we'll get back to you later. Thank you. Let's get back at 8:55. Sorry about that. So 5 minutes from the break time. So let's get back over by 8:55. Thank you.
No to TikTok friends, no.
Aldrich judging you.
It's banned in the US, so you shouldn't.
Is it true that it's soft?
Well, it's banned in
too much people use it.
Uses whack to the break. Yeah.
Are there too much Filipinos using TikTok?
Guys, at this time.
Mayors, are you?
All right, so it's already 8:55. Welcome back to our call or to our meetup instead of our channel. So, hello again everyone. How's everyone? We still have our questions on Menti ongoing. So, if you have any questions, please go on and visit menti.com and use the code 461903 for our next event. So what we'll be doing over is a panel session. So for our next session, for our main panelists over, so providing you over their bio. Our first panelist is the CXO of a fintech company called NextPay and has led and collaborated with numerous design teams in various industries throughout the United States, Canada, and the Philippines. He also works with companies and organizations to build stronger design cultures and processes through consultations and workshops, as well as organizing and mentoring through the nonprofit design organization UXPH. So let's give it up for Aldrich Tan.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Aldrich. Hope you're well. And also, so here's the spoiler alert is already here. So our second panelist over is Don. So Don is the CEO and co-founder of fintech company NextPay and has a background in design and software engineering, having had several years of experience working as a digital nomad and remotely for different companies in Vancouver, San Francisco. Don has vast experience and knowledge in many different arrangements and tools for remote work. Now, having a company of his own, he is able to implement best practices and techniques in running a fully remote team. It's his belief that remote work is even more relevant here in Metro Manila due to the unbearable traffic and an ever increasing amount of enabling tools. So let's all welcome Don Pansacola.
Hi, everybody. Good evening.
All right. Hello. Hello for the panelists. So could you share to us how your company over is remote first and what it's like to be a fully remote company? Anyone could start.
Sure. Aldrich, would you like to take lead, and then I'll just supplement it with things?
Sure. So I'll give a really quick overview of what NextPay is. So NextPay is a fintech company. What we do is we actually, at the moment, we are a financial wellness company. So we help employers pay their employees efficiently and to pretty much any bank. So we disperse salaries, and we make it a lot easier for a lot of companies to actually do that. So just by doing that, we enable companies to be remote in their payments. Because traditionally, there's a lot of companies that still have to go to the bank or pay their employees by check or even cash. So we're kind of pushing employers and businesses to stop doing that. And then so on the other side is we also have an app for employees. Whenever they receive their salaries, it gets automatically budgeted for them according to their living situation and their needs. So hoping with the goal of helping people save more money as they continue to work. So right now our team, there are 4 of us in the product team. 2 have actually, or Janelle is over here as well. She's also part of UXPH. And then so there's myself, Don, and we have another developer. So yeah, we're completely remote. Before the lockdown, we would also meet up maybe about twice a week or whenever we need to in person, just to keep that, actual social interaction without the social distancing at play. And then we would have team lunches and all that. But now that, but because we were already very, well accustomed to working remotely, the lockdown has been a very small adjustment for us compared to other companies. Anything to add, Don?
No, that was perfect. I think that we've been lucky in that, we've been, as Aldrich mentioned, already working remotely for the most part prior to the lockdown. And so you could say that was practice. And so this lockdown period, for the most part, we haven't really been, at least in terms of our productivity, we haven't been as affected. We've been using tools prior to the lockdown that we're continuing to use now. And yeah, so as I mentioned in my bio, I definitely think that the opportunity for companies to switch to, if not fully remote, at least a lot of their groups get remote. I think it's a really good opportunity these days, especially as internet becomes faster, as there are more tools made available. And we'll share some of the tools that we use in our team that will help facilitate businesses in transitioning. I also wanted to add that after, during this lockdown, I think Mark mentioned this, and I think many companies are forced to suddenly transition into remote work. Again, many of these companies are also realizing, hey, it's not too bad. In fact, this is working. And in fact, some companies have even found increased productivity. And an example is, I know some people who, during this lockdown, because they're forced to bring all their meetings online, their meetings are now succinct. So instead of spending so much time getting to the destination and then having small talk, sometimes it's in a restaurant or in a food court if it's informal, and spending all this time, suddenly their meetings are cut really, really short to what the bare necessities of that meetings are. And some of the people I've been speaking to about this have actually told me that, when the lockdown ends, they're going to try their best to continue doing things remotely because of all the benefits. And for the most part, I think it's also quite cheaper as well, because you don't need to pay for the transportation. You don't need to pay for, if you go to meet in the coffee shop or in a restaurant, you don't need to pay for that anymore. So overall, I think it is much cheaper.
Yeah. To add really quick, it is cheaper for a lot of businesses. I mean, if you have a really big team, I'm sure there's something else you can do. But for a more lean team, especially a startup like ours, it really does save on a lot of costs. You don't need an office anymore or anything like that. And then I see a comment here. You do end up feeling a lot busier because the meetings just happen one after the other. And it's true, you have no excuse now because they know where you are. You're at home. But as Dre mentioned, you take little breaks here and there, block off some time for yourself, make sure you space it out a bit.
Right. So, all right. So that's one quick way to, well, not actually quick. So, but that's how NextPay is going on with the remote work setup so far. And we actually have over some questions from prior the event as well. So one question here goes with more companies having remote work setups, how do you think should they or wait, with more companies having remote work setups, how do you think should big and traditional companies go about this? And what do you think are the factors that they need to consider over?
That's a good question. So just to understand, if I understand you correctly, how would a bigger company, unlike a small startup like us, transition over to working remotely? That's the gist of the question.
Sorry, again?
Was that the gist of the question? How do big companies transition over to fully remote?
It's really, yeah, how should they consider that? Like, should they actually transition to that or should they not?
Honestly, my opinion is that remote work, while it's good for some, it's not good for others. It also depends on the companies. As I think also Mark mentioned, that some companies, unfortunately, like BPI, is not able to go remote because of the way their technology is built. People actually have to get into the premise to work. And we'll see that many companies still can't, at least for the time being. And as technology progresses and the norm becomes more towards working at home, then you'll see more companies approach that. However, there are a lot more companies than people realize that can already transition over to remote. If not the full company, at least parts of it. You can start first with maybe a specific team, and allowing them to, experimenting with working remote. There are several tools that you could use, and gauge the success, gauge the productivity, gauge the cost savings if there are any, gauge the increased amount of contributions, as well as making sure that the culture still stays intact. And that's a big thing about working remotely. The culture is, I wouldn't say it's diminished. You could still have really good work culture if you're fully remote. But there is definitely a difference over there, and that's something that needs to be considered. But absolutely, I think big companies can transition over eventually. In fact, one of my cousins, she runs a very large company here in the Philippines, and I think they have about maybe 5,000 people. And because of this COVID outbreak, all of them had to suddenly work remotely, but they were able to successfully do it. I don't know the exact details, but they had all the necessary tools in place. Of course, the first week or two took a while for all of them to start adjusting to it, right? But right now, as far as I know, they're all working fully remotely from home, and they have been quite effective at that. For what it's worth, they are in the tech scene, the tech space. So a lot of them are a lot more familiar with technology. A lot of them, have their own laptops that they're provided with from work. So it wasn't that difficult for them to transition. The biggest difficulty was the fact that they were a huge amount of people.
I'd like to add, I also worked at some corporate, I did some consulting at some corporate companies back in the States. And I guess in a way they're tech companies, but because they were so large and they've been around for quite a while, a lot of their infrastructure was very traditional. Like everybody still had to go to the office, their desks were there, but they did transition, like what Don said, start with allowing some teams to go remote and put that into practice, test it out, allow more teams to transition that way. So you can start with, your digital teams, your development teams, your design teams, and start to expand that outwards. And then within the company itself, I'm sure they would also be able to share best tips and tricks, and then start to invest in some tools for different teams. For us, like Don said, we'll share some of we'll also talk about some of the tools that we've been using. But for the most part, it's been really good for productivity and also psychological. And from a psychological standpoint, it's actually been very helpful because we never really feel like we're alone in that regard. So that's pretty nice.
One more thing I wanted to add, and one of the things that was mentioned here in the chat is about security. Like when a person's working from home, but they're dealing with sensitive data, how do you deal with that? And to that, so I used to work for a company that was in the space of internet security. It was called OpenDNS, and they were eventually acquired by Cisco. So huge, huge company. And they had very generous remote work policy. So we had an office. And in fact, the office was probably about a 10-minute walk from where I lived. But yet I would still work from home, or I would work in coffee shops because I just love working remotely. But because of the nature of the company, they had things in place to prevent, well, they're an internet security company for what it's worth. So in a sense, they already had the things in place to prevent sensitive data from leaving, right? And so there are companies, especially, like say finance industry, right, where they may not have the things in place to prevent secure data from leaving, right? So unfortunately, like the BPI example, unfortunately, they would have to actually be in the office, or they can't take their stuff at home. And that's the unfortunate reality. But for other companies, I think there are tools that you could start implementing that, for example, if you used OpenDNS, which the company I used to work with, you could actually have people working remotely and yet still deal with sensitive data. It's like your firewall is now no longer limited to a building, but now it's all throughout the world. It's like almost like a virtual private network of sorts. So there are tools in place that allow businesses, despite having secure information that they need to protect, still allow their employees to work remotely.
Yeah. So actually, I also work in a really big company, and that's usually what happens. Usually their main concern becomes more of, oh, how do we make sure they're working? How do we make sure their networks are secure? Do we use a VPN or something else? We're also actually open with the rest of the speakers on how they think about the topic. So maybe Mark, knowing how you have experience on working on a very big company, what's your take on this?
So I have experienced this. So before Caliber, I was working at another fintech as well, and I completely understand actually where fintechs are usually the ones that require quite a bit more security because they're dealing with money. Um, um, but I think generally the problem here in the Philippines, at least when it comes to dealing with security, is a lot of it is extreme paranoia, and a lot of it is a lot of just old folks who have not transitioned into or knowledge of the current tool set. Like the fintech that I was working for, they complete and it almost felt like I was still working or I was working with my aunts because they kept on using Viber. And they didn't want to transition away from Viber or Telegram, even though Telegram isn't actually secure either. um, but I think um, the best thing to do, I think, for companies is at least to subsidize some of the things that your your employees need. Like, let's say, if you're scared about data and whatever software they have, subsidize the hardware essentially. Like, be and offer up, give the laptops, etc., so that you can actually control the software and the hardware that they're using. Example, the fintech that I was working on did not want me to use Zeppelin or Sketch or whatever because they wanted to control as much of the data as possible, even though that was a little bit paranoia almost. Yeah, it kept on just in mind, which is basically archaic. um, yeah, a lot of it is generally that tech dinosaurs. I think it's all a matter of just doing your research, like looking for that end-to-end and end-to-end encryption, or tools that have end-to-end encryption, and making a case for it. Actually, if you can make a good case for it, and sometimes you have to play politics with that to make it seem like it's their idea, it works. Actually, it would work. For companies that are less or smaller in that sense, trust becomes a default. Actually, that's something that you need to realize, that trust needs to become a default. You wouldn't hire someone that you didn't trust anyways, so trust becomes a default. But also for trust to become the default, employees need to understand that commitment needs to be shared and also be the default as well. So yeah.
Very interesting when you also mentioned about trust and of it being the default, especially with yeah, sometimes smaller teams you tend to be, may it be because you're in a smaller group so you have more closeness with them. But going on with the chats so far, I've seen that it's been a challenge so far for big companies on handling hardware breakdowns or PC breakdowns. One of our audience, Tisha Ebasco, says providing its support, which can't be met by diagnosing alone. Uh, any takes on this? On like, how do you help maybe non-tech people, because not all industries are in the tech industry, right? And not everyone's technically knowledgeable about, oh, how do I fix my computer, it's not working, or maybe my internet connection is not working. Like, how do we equip them as well before they go on fully working remotely? Anyone can answer.
So I think I mean, COVID lockdown aside, if it were normal, if it were the normal days, then I would say that first, not everyone is actually able to work remotely. And I say that in a way that there's all this hype about, oh, great, I get to work remotely, or remote work is a new thing. But in reality, it's not necessarily something that some people even want to do or are even capable of doing. And it could also, and I say this because there are people who are forced, or they, how I say it? The question you asked is, how do people who are not really good with technology, how do they start working remotely? But that sounds to me as if they're being forced to work remotely when it's not necessarily something that they can do. But in the situation that the company has no offices and that people really have no choice but to work remotely, then there should be a training program in place or something in place that teaches people how to use the necessary software. It could be as simple as use Google Docs instead of Microsoft Word. What are the differences, or project management software that's in the cloud, like Asana or Notion. They need to be trained because it's not necessarily something that people who are not tech savvy can easily pick up, right? So that's just, I guess, the reality. But I guess the premise is that there is really no way for them to work in the office. But if there is a way to work in the office, if there is a physical office, then I would still recommend that if they're not as productive at home because they don't have the means or the knowledge to work from home, then I would suggest that you go to the office and you work there, or you learn how to work from home through a training program of sorts.
I guess I'll add to that. So I have an example. My mother is 65, and she is the executive assistant to the director of the Western Pacific region for the WHO. So currently, of course, they're very busy, but of course, they've been all forced to work from home. And because my mom is essentially a glorified secretary, her job, like even from before, they've been trying to force her to like bring a laptop at home, and she's been denying it, and she's like been outright denying it because she's an EA. Her job really does not allow her to actually work from home. When your job is basically handing off papers to be signed and going from department to department and mailing things, etc., it's not essentially something that can be worked from home. So not everything essentially can be worked from home. So now she's actually having a hard time, and she's constantly asking me how can I paste watermarks and things like that. But what's important is to actually have like dedicated resources. Just as Don said, like your IT team needs to be there to at least assist them if something goes wrong. Like my mom had a hard time accessing their VPN for the first 2 days, so she needed to constantly call their IT support for that. So yeah, not everything can be worked from home, and at the same time, you need to have like that support system for them as well.
How about Drei and Ferds? Do you have any thoughts on those?
So far, I have no experience, but because I've been working for small companies, ganyan, and right now, my full-time job is in the UK, and I'm in the Philippines. Ganyan. So, what my old company did, they're a big Ayala company. What they did now, kwento lang, somebody just told me about it, is they created a knowledge base, an online knowledge base for everything that you need to know if this happens, if you have this issue, if you have this issue, if you have this issue. So, yeah, I think it's a good idea. But otherwise, I have no experience.
Right. All right. Earlier you mentioned, Aldrich, about productivity tools being used when working remotely. Maybe you could share to us like how does your company go about that? How do you decide on which tools to use, and like which one of those could help you actually be more productive when working from home?
Sure. So I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Slack. That's almost a given nowadays. Use some sort of team chat. Please do not use Viber, or Facebook Messenger. But I know a lot of places like to use that for work. That's a really bad idea. You want to use things like Slack, or for us, we use Mattermost, which is basically Slack, but it's open source and free actually. We use that because it allows for documentation, easy searching through all your and organization of all your conversations. So if you or your team don't already use some chatting platform like that, try and convince them to do that because it will increase productivity. So and then actually, what's interesting is it really helps to have somebody on your team who's always like on product hunt or is very curious about new technologies. And for our team, that's Don. He's always looking out for new productivity tools all the time. So we're constantly trying new things and trying to optimize our process. So Don can definitely speak a bit more to that. But we also right now we were using Asana because it's also free. With it's a freemium model, but right now we're trying out another tool called ClickUp, which is like Asana on steroids, it has a lot of capabilities. It's really powerful. So maybe your team would find a lot of value in that. But project management software is really good. For UXPH, we use Notion. Notion's also really powerful. It's an all-in-one kind of tool. Yeah. So those are some. I'll let Don talk about the rest because he has a lot more to say on those ones.
Yeah, sure. So, we're a small startup, so we're very, very careful with our spending. So, of course, the tools we use have to be really justified if we're going to pay for it, or we try to use the free versions if possible. And that's also one of the reasons why we decided to use Mattermost instead of Slack, because while there is a free version of Slack, you'll find that you'll reach a 10,000 message limit quickly. And so with Mattermost, we're hosting it ourselves, and we pay for the server. That's around $5 per month. But that's essentially, that's worked for us for like this entire period. There's a Slack where you're looking around a little more than $6, last I checked, per person per month. And so we definitely save a lot of money with Mattermost. And with Asana, we've been using it because of the free version. But lately, we just started using ClickUp, as Aldrich mentioned. And I can't recall how it compares to Notion, if you guys are familiar with Notion. But what is really good about ClickUp is, well, first, if you look at their pricing page, in the column where it says the price, underneath it, there's a button there that says negotiate with us or work a deal with us. And it's a very interesting thing that they had over there. So if you click on it, it opens up a message. You can say, hey, you can just ask them, hey, can you give me a discount? And for us, our approach was like, hey, can you, for the sake of purchase parity power, what that means is essentially the rates of the Philippines, we want to get a discount that's hopefully catered to our purchasing power. And they were very generous enough to say, yeah, sure, we'll do that. So as a result, I won't tell you the price we got, but we were able to get a good deal. And I even asked them to extend our trial, and they did for an extra 3 months, right? So stuff like that.
Wow.
You can, and that's another thing also when it comes to using tools, you can just message them, ask them. There's no harm in asking. At the very worst, they'll say no. And we've got a no, but that's fine, right? So you just ask them. So other tools we use. One tool that we used a lot prior to the lockdown was a tool called Sneak.io, SNEEK.io. Now, what Sneak does is you run it while you're working, and it takes screenshots of your face every minute or every 2 minutes or every 5 minutes. You could decide the interval, or you could even do it manually. And recently, especially because many people are looking into remote tools, Sneak has gotten a bit of a backlash. People saying, "Oh, that's creepy." People, sticking your photo every second. The thing is, it's important to realize that Sneak is not used to make sure that the person's there. It's really for the cultural, for the team culture. Because when you're working remotely alone, it's very easy to feel lonely. And I think someone mentioned about keeping a permanent Zoom call going, right? So you can see what's going on. And it's the same way, except it isn't as high bandwidth. It just takes photos, and you see a grid of all the faces in your team. And that matters. It matters in terms of just not feeling lonely. And when it comes to working from home or remote work, psychology is a really huge thing. And it's sometimes difficult to kind of figure out how much am I willing to spend to provide the psychological comfort with my team. But there is a number to it. It's just a matter of figuring out if it's justified, right? And another tool that we've started using very recently is called Sococo, SOCOCO. Some of you guys might have heard it, but I would encourage you guys to check it out. What it is it's a digital virtual office. It's a top-down view of an office, and you can see icons of each person, and you could jump from one office to the other, one room to the other, and you could start video conversations and audio conversations quite easily, as if you were in, a real office compound. You could enter a room and start a conversation with somebody. And it sounds very gimmicky, but and it is, you could say, right? But the psychological value it provides is actually quite good, because you can see that people are there, people are doing their own thing, they're working, and it increases communication a lot. So I remember I was talking to Aldrich, we were having our meeting, and then suddenly Janelle hopped in and asked us a question, as if, it was like a real office. And then after we answered the question, she just left. And I was like to Aldrich, that was pretty neat. That seemed like, as if how things would be if we were like in a real office. And I think the most important thing is just you feel that sense of community, sense of like people are actually, in the office working, even though you're not really in the office.
Yeah. Similarly, if not Sokoko, I typed it out there. It's called Remo. So these are all just virtual offices that you guys can try out. And it, like Don said, it there's a sense of community there. It's kind of nice because you can see other people and they're working. It's a little different from seeing that somebody's online on Slack or your team chat. It just has a different presence to it, maybe because there's an avatar associated with it. And then within Sokoko, you can see if they're listening on audio. You can see if they're actually talking or sharing a screen or something. So you can kind of see that people are in a meeting on the side or talking with each other. So it's quite nice. It brings more transparency and visibility to the workplace.
Yeah, so what's interesting, and just a small anecdotal story. Earlier today, I wanted to ask Aldrich a question, but I saw that he was in the middle of a meeting with Janelle, because he was in an office room and they were just blinking, so that means that they were talking, right? So I was like, all right, they're busy, I'll wait for it. So if we didn't have that, for example, I'd probably message him in Mattermost or Slack, and I wouldn't get a response right away because he's probably busy like talking, right? So for me, I'm like, I don't know if he read my message or not. So there's that whole visibility, there's more transparency in that sense. Yeah.
Can I add to that?
Go ahead, Janelle.
Also, there's like doors where you can close and you can also knock. Those kind of little cues I think are really cool to simulate kind of when you're working like in a physical place as well. There's also, I believe, like you can get somebody to go to your room if you need to talk to them, and then they'll you as a person who's been getting pulled can allow them to do that or not. If not, you can just message them really quickly and say you're busy or something.
Yeah,
that's it.
And one funny thing also I've been doing is so I have meetings with people who are not part of our company, and typically I'd send them a link to Google Meet. But what I've been doing is you can create a guest invitation to a specific room in your virtual Sokoko office. So I created a virtual link to our conference room, and I'd send it to people, and they'd hop in, and I'd be like, welcome to our office. And they could see like other people within the entire office working, doing their thing, having their own meetings, because their emojis are blinking, right? And while we're having our own thing. So it makes it feel a lot more like, it's an actual office, even though it really isn't. And that still, it counts for a lot in terms of the psychology, and that does increase productivity as well.
Yeah, really agreeing on the focus on psychology, mental health, and being in the zone. I remember also where I used to work and where I'm currently working. They're actually as much as they're not as what do you call this, proficient or already established when it comes to remote working practices. I believe it's also because of the nature of the industry. So they also provide mental health advisors for the employees, especially for those who are first timers when it comes to remote working, because others just work at I mean others just live at their apartments or in their condos. So it's really not that accessible to have human contact unless it's just like a face-to-face call. That virtual office, I really like the idea. Some of our audience also said that if I use that I can walk out. Could you walk out and just slam the door? I'm out of this meeting.
Yeah, you
Yes.
could
Anyways.
just transfer rooms. Really, it's kind of nice because you can have your own private room
Oh.
there. So
And there some, so you can choose your office layout, and some of the office layouts have like a beach that you could just jump into, or a yacht or a boat that you could just hop on. It's
it's cute.
gimmicky but cute. Yeah.
I could imagine instead of just going to the office, oh, we have our team outing virtually. Anyways,
Actually,
so far,
sorry, one
yeah,
more to
go ahead,
add.
Aldrich.
Speaking
Yes.
of team outings, right? I mean, so these, even the UXPH team, we've been testing out Remo for conferences and all that. We're able to fit quite a few people in a video chat, just like Zoom. But it tries to add some sort of physical component to it, where you see everybody's seating arrangement on the floor and all that. So it's kind of nice. And places like Sagoko and Remo, they allow for multiple people to be in a room, so you can have your whole all hands or a big team meeting there, and then you just break out into smaller groups after. So it's quite nice.
Right. Okay. Um, really agreeing on that notion of being in a space. It actually gives that feeling that, oh, okay, you're really with the people you're working with. But one of the questions as well prior to the uh, the event went with in relation to being with and feeling our coworkers. Uh, what are work from home or remote work etiquette for both coworkers and housemates? And they're asking if should we let them follow certain rules, or maybe there are things that we don't have rules yet but we probably forget or don't know that exist. Or like I remember sometimes people would say that, oh, they'll mute over their mic because, okay, they have to suddenly tend to the cat, or they're being called out to have lunch or dinner, and then you can't just say, wait, I'm at work. So there's also this the respect there. So what's your take on that? Like work from home or remote work etiquette for both coworkers and housemates.
So I have
I
a
might be able.
no, sorry, go on.
Go on, please. All right, I'll take it.
We're Canadian.
Yeah. So Dre mentioned earlier about setting rules with your housemates, right? Or keeping your door locked and really setting expectations. And back when many years ago, when I started working remotely, my parents, Asian parents, couldn't comprehend that you're working but you're on your laptop. How does that make sense, right? But yeah, I'm legit
Yeah,
working,
Dre's
making
reacting.
money.
She's like, yeah,
right. And so in fact, like I was working, I'd be really busy, and then my mother at the time when I was living with them would be like, "Can you wash the dishes right now? Right now!" I said, "Right now." And I'm like, I no, I really can't. This is So it's about the first thing you got to do is to really, really make it clear to them that this is work. This is not fun. I'm actually doing this. I have a job. This is for me to make money so I can help pay the bills or something like that, right? It needs to be very, very clear. And it took a while for them to finally get into an understanding that when I'm working, and they respected that. But there's a process. It's just really about communicating. But another thing also that Dre mentioned, which I fully agree, is ideally you have your own space, your own room. If you could have a door that you could lock, that would be great. So it kind of sets that physical barrier as opposed to a sociological barrier. And that really, really having that physical location is not only good for your relationship with the people and making it clear that you are in work mode, but it also helps with your focus and your productivity. So you're not distracted with what's going on outside.
Yeah. That's pretty much I agree, like Dre said, just be really disciplined with your time, right? And communicate. And so she said that she would have do not disturb signs outside the door and all that. If you have, like what Don said, if you have a physical barrier, that would help. And if you're living with other people, just be like, okay, for the next 3 hours I'm gonna be working, don't bother me. Just really communicate that and hold your ground there. Unfortunately, I have a cat, so the cat has no barriers. But people do.
Yep. So can I add to that? Like
Go ahead, Dre.
they said everything that I said. So I have additional stuff. Um, uh, So I told you guys about my timed playlists. So what I do sometimes, like when I really don't want to be bothered, so I explain to my family, the ones I live with here, that when they hear the music, it means I'm working. So I'm using my dad's sound bar. So it's just connected to my phone via Bluetooth. So the sound is really, really loud, as in you can hear it from the entire house. And if somebody calls me outside, I can't hear them. That's good, right? So what I did, I told them that, okay, as long as the music is playing, it means I'm working. When the music stops, okay, you can bother me for like 10, 15 minutes. And then when I start the music again, you can't bother me anymore. So something like that. So you have to set something with them so that they understand. Parang ganon.
That's nice, actually. If it's not a physical barrier, then it's an audio barrier.
Yes.
Good
So,
cues.
yeah. So what I did also with, if you can do this with Spotify, I'm not sure if you can do it with other platforms. So when you listen to one song, right, after that song, there's kind of a quiet space and then the next song. So what I did with Spotify is I did auto crossfade so that the songs never stop until the playlist actually stops.
Nice.
So you can also use that if you don't have a room or if you don't have that kind of setup, if you don't have the luxury of having a room or a door, so you can use an audio room to like give you your own space.
You know, that crossfade thing is actually kind of funny. It makes it seem like they're waiting right outside your door for the music to stop so they can finally disturb you.
Yeah, like that. Yeah. So, but they don't know that the playlist that I'm playing right now is the 90-minute one, so they have to wait really long. Yeah. There.
Right. How about Ferds or Mark? Any tips on etiquette, or I guess maybe on your experience or in your setups?
So in my case, so some of the stuff that I kind of read and kind of works for me, and or at least I made sense to me is, people have said like, um, whenever you go into online meetings, if it's possible, always keep the video on at the very least so that you know who you're speaking to. Mute when you're not speaking. Those are just very basic things. So yeah, but yeah, there's an importance to the whole you see who you're speaking to, so that they focus on you and you focus on them. Of course, not everyone can do that. Let's say if you have a limited bandwidth, etc. I completely empathize with the whole your mom wants you to wash dishes, etc. But yeah, also, or like your parents asking you to do certain things. I'm just lucky now because I'm immunocompromised, so they can't ask me to do any chores outside. But yeah, I've also I completely agree with the whole idea of a physical barrier. So I'm quite lucky that my room is on like the far end of the house. So like I technically have my own tower as well. So they just don't bother me most of the day now. But yeah, I would try to, as much as possible, limit your distractions to the things that you would normally see in the office. In my case, it's like white noise. Sometimes I do have my dog with me, but it's also sometimes pretty annoying to like have to like constantly see my dog. Like sometimes she would be biting through things, so like I kick her out during that time. So yeah.
Your dog just wants to love you. Another tool that I use personally is this website called brain.fm. Brain.fm. Yeah, so what it does is, I mean, I don't know, for me at least it works. It may not work for everyone. So some people like white noise, some people like jazz music, or something in the background. For me, at least with brain.fm, I have noise canceling headphones, and then it has repetitive music going there, and then before I know it, I'm like extremely focused, and everything else is drowned out, and I'm just heads down completely. If it helps, like they actually also they have focus music, they have relaxation, meditation, and sleep music. It's actually quite useful.
So, I have another thing, by the way. Not everything can be done digitally. So sometimes it pays to have like a notebook with you. And in my case, like I've gotten very used to doing bullet journaling.
Dre
And
also
it's
showed her notes.
yeah, bullet journaling super useful. Not everything can be done completely digitally. So yeah, there are things like notes. So yeah, keep your ink nearby and keep your pens nearby.
Probably there's because of that notion, like even before when video calls weren't even a thing. Usually people when they call, they prepare like a notebook and pen. Like, oh, could you say that again? And then they write it down. So maybe there's that habit that we eventually grew or was passed on to the generations.
Can you
Just
spell Gabbana?
anyways, so just checking over with our donors so far, we're currently at 45% of our goal. So that's around 4,500 for our Frontline Feeders Philippines. So thank you so much to everyone. And let's continue supporting and donating over for our frontliners for COVID. A quick question maybe for Don and Aldrich from our chat. So someone asked, can you please expound on ClickUp and how it actually works for a remote team? Also, have you heard or know about Monday, Tuesday? No, I think they're talking about Monday.com because
Yeah, yeah.
I usually see it on YouTube ads almost every day.
So there are probably 100 project management uh, apps or software as a service in the cloud, and there is no best one. Like Monday.com, I haven't personally used it, but I know people who have, and I've heard really good things about that. Basecamp and so on. So honestly, it's a matter of figuring out what works. You got to try. You got to try them for sure, and figure out what works best for you. And second, are you willing to pay for it for the paid features, right? And what drew us to ClickUp was because we found ourselves having to use so many different tools. And so, for example, for project management, it was Asana. For documentation, it was Slite, SLITE. And then we also had Google Docs for the actual documents and spreadsheets and just all over the place. But what we liked about ClickUp is it somehow, if you look at their headline and their website, it says one app to rule them all. And in fact, if you go to the landing page, it shows this is a replacement for Google Sheets. This is a replacement for Asana and Notion. This is a like it supposedly has a replacement for everything. And so that intrigued us. And I think the biggest thing really would be their cost structure, because compared to all the other things we've seen, they're, I think, by far the cheapest for the value you could get from it. Like, they not only can do more than what Asana does, but they're also cheaper than Asana on a per person basis. And so you got to kind of weigh the pros and cons for the capabilities as well as the price points. And I guess for us personally also, it really helps that they have all these integrations, and integrations with, say, GitHub, integrations with Slack, integrations with pretty much a lot of things. That's what drew us also to ClickUp.
I'm looking at Monday.com right now. It looks like they also have Gantt charts and all that, which as well ClickUp has. I mean, and for me, from a UX designer's perspective, when I started using ClickUp, I was kind of overwhelmed just because it's a really, really beefy product. It has a lot of features. So, so that means a learning curve, which means just give it some time, just play around with it, spend a bit of time in getting used to it. And that could really help. I'm still getting used to it myself, but so far it's been pretty good. It does more or less everything we needed to do. So I think from a project management perspective as well, because you can lock spaces, and the Gantt chart feature in itself is really, really useful. And it has all these dependencies. Tasks are dependent on this and this and this and this. So
Speaking of tools, one of the questions passed over to us as well, although this is more of communication, and this may be um, kind of controversial. Well, not really controversial, but really more of pertaining to a specific demographic. So the question goes: I have a client who belongs to the Gen X. He's comfortable using Facebook Messenger. How do I encourage non-tech people to shift other means of communication like Slack? Um, I was just really thinking more of, okay, so do we have to? influence people, or is it really more of a sort of okay, what works for people? What's your take on that? Even Dre, Mark, or Ferds can answer if ever, or if Don and Aldrich has an answer.
Sure, I could give it a shot.
Go ahead, Don.
Ultimately, what makes things most efficient wins. And when I say efficient, not just efficient for you, but efficient for the customer. I've had experience in the past where we would ask a client to adopt a new tool that we like to use, right? But like, for example, I don't know how, I haven't used Basecamp in many years, but back in the day, you could open up Basecamp for your customers. We found that customers rarely logged in. They would just message us anyways. They would ask us for updates there as opposed to looking in Basecamp to see the progress of their project. So you could tell them what to do or to get these tools, but ultimately, if they don't use it, they don't use it. And so you can't expect them to, if they adopt it and they use it really great, they're awesome. But for the most part, I would say appeal to the lowest common denominator. And if that's the client, then so be it, unfortunately.
Any takes from the others? Oh, Dre, yes.
So I had an experience before working with a Gen X client, but whoever put that question is actually lucky that Facebook Messenger, he chose Facebook Messenger to call. My Gen X client called me on the phone every day for updates. He was micromanaging me via cell phone, as in regular call, regular text. And he didn't have Facebook, he didn't have anything. The only thing he had was an email. Yeah, so what happened is he's still my client up to now. And naabutan kami, or we reached like a point in this lockdown. And so right now, I mentioned, nasa bundok ako. I'm in the province. And my house is dead spot for Globe, Smart, and Sun. I don't have signal. For Globe, Smart, and Sun, I only have internet. So I had to explain to him why it was like that, why I had no signal. I had to screenshot my phone and send it to him several times via email that, look, I have no signal. Look, I have no signal. I only have internet. Like, if you want, I can teach you how to use Zoom or Hangouts if you want to. Yeah. And since, of course, he was desperate to be able to communicate with me, he agreed to it. So siguro it's a special circumstance lang na nawalan ako ng signal for this entire period. Yeah. But yun, I'm not sure how you can explain it to them. Like, if it was in a normal circumstance or if we didn't have the lockdown. Yeah, like what Don said, whatever is much more comfortable to the client, we usually just have to adjust. And then once it becomes uncomfortable for you, like in my end, I lost signal. He was the one who was already willing to adjust naman. So just like that.
So it's really more of like building that relationship first and going back again to what they've been telling about trust, so that okay, people can adjust properly into which their people would be more comfortable or optimal for both, well, parties or so. Speaking of parties, so one of our askers, or the ones who sent over questions, sent over this really fun question. So hope everyone's ready with this. So someone asked, how do you handle relationships with your significant other when you both work remotely in the same house, or maybe in the same place, or
Tell them to use Sokoko.
any takes on this? So what it's not applicable for me for both anyways. So how does everyone work for it, or maybe what's your advice to them if it's not something that you're experiencing right now?
So the significant other lives in the same home or somewhere
Yeah,
else?
like in the same place. That's the specific question. Or do you have any other setups, like
It
how?
just makes sense to have a separate workstation, like what Kit said. That's a good idea. Like we said, living with a significant other, I guess, is not too different from living with family or other people in the house, right? You just have to set up your boundaries and make sure that you have the discipline when you're working. That's pretty much my 25 centavos.
I think a potential issue here also would be if the significant other does not work remotely, has all this free time, and is not really, it's easy if you guys are both focused during work hours, and then you guys
True.
get to spend quality time when it's done. But then if that balance is uneven, then God help you. I don't know.
Any thoughts on this, Dre, Mark, or Ferds? Or do you prefer not to answer?
Okay, so I don't live with my significant other
Go, Mark.
yet, so I wouldn't know. My best advice, I guess, is to make sure at least when you're like. But I have had to like answer calls or work in like when I'm at his place or when he's here. And what I've learned to do is at least not work in this in like the same bedroom or whatever, because it's just completely what they call this. It gets completely um distracting at the very least when it's just way too comfortable. So I usually end up using the kitchen, and he usually ends up using his mom's room.
Yeah. So yeah, for me naman, and for me in the past, no, meron pa akong significant other, lol. So what we did is, ours was a little bit more tricky kasi we had different shifts. So parang morning shift ako tapos mid shift siya. So may times of the day na wala akong ginagawa and gusto ko siyang kulitin. And then may times of the day naman na siya yung walang ginagawa and gusto niya akong kulitin. So we had a really mature talk about it. Na, okay, from this time to this time, I'm working. From this time to this time, you're working. And this is the time when we're both not working. Yeah. So if your partner or if your significant other is mature enough, you have no problem. Yeah.
Some of our joiners here in the call mentioned someone worked with their significant other in the same office, and now they're working together at home, and it isn't an issue for us. So maybe that setup before of working, so it's kind of like, okay, you know how to act professionally and when to act as a couple. Someone here also said 5 years experience, get really good noise canceling headphones, or set up a full separate office. And the other one says someone trained their significant other well. Don't know what that means, anyways. But we're almost at the end of our session, so maybe oh, sorry, Ferds, you were saying
Me no,
something.
once one. Yeah, okay. So I think this is one thing that can help for that person. I think that person just wants a juicy answer. So one thing is just make it a reward, something to look forward to after the job. So I think yeah, if they have a common why are you laughing? Anyways, if they have a common like break time, make it as a reward so you can just really focus on the job first. Like, okay, we are both free on this time, as they had said, or we are free on this time. So make it as a reward, like I will focus here and you will focus over there, and then we'll meet up, and then yeah.
Can you elaborate on that reward? It wasn't clear to me. I'm kidding.
Mark, we're live streamed.
Mark, what's that?
This has to be safe for work.
Yes.
By the way, so since everyone mentions that one, so people have been mentioning over with safe for work practices when they're in the office. So like you have a different persona in a sense when you're at work. Do we also have safe for work practices when working remotely, or do you think there should be or there shouldn't be? Anyone can answer.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, you need to be disciplined and then you need to be professional, right? Like there may be times where you need to screen share or or hop on a call, and then you can't really. You just need to be aware of what you have on your screen, and work time. Just keep it as work time. Pretty simple as that. in my opinion.
On that note, there is an app if you use a Mac. It's called Muzzle, Muzzle. What it does is it stops notifications from coming up whenever you're screen sharing, and it might save your life
or your job. Yeah.
Any other thoughts from Dreyford's or Mark on that?
Sorry, this is again about safer work and etiquette.
Yeah, so I mean the notion of, because usually when we're in an office or we're in our working spaces with our coworkers, we usually have that notion of, oh, there are safer work and not safer work practices, or there's that mindset. Do you think when working remotely there should be safer work practices or there shouldn't be? And thoughts on that?
I guess it's important. I mean, there is some leeway. Like, let's say again, I've mentioned, in the case of the US, I remember a lot of women who worked at Yahoo got mad at Marissa Mayer when she took out work from home, because a lot of mothers, like, they can't actually like separate taking care of their kids from like the time that they have to do work as well. So there is some leeway to it, but also yes, it's still needed. Like, let's say if you have an important meeting, like, move to a place where at least you can put a do not disturb, etc. And that's why scheduling things is very, very important, I guess.
Yeah, that reminds me, I've been seeing also some of those when share your home work from home video screen caps while working. So yeah, it's really relevant, especially for those mothers that they have to sometimes even tend to their kids even at work, and because sometimes no one they're alone at their homes and just with their baby, or maybe their partners or their uh the people they live in with the same house are also busy with other things, so maybe there can be some sort of excuse that can be provided for them. So we're almost at the end of our time for this remote FFC. So maybe a few words from everyone. What do they want to say about those, about remote work, or how do they enhance working from home?
I just wanted to add really quick. I mean, Dre and Ferds alluded to this, but I guess I cannot. I just want to stress the importance of over communication, especially like we already over communicate in person, but then sometimes like it's more necessary now than ever, right? And then, for example, since a lot of us are designers, if we're checking up or doing design reviews with each other, let's try and have it more often throughout the day or throughout the design process. And it will help make things a lot more efficient, reduce churn. And if you're working with your developers like we are pretty closely, just knock on their door and then just ask them questions. So that's another way of staying really, really efficient and lean. That's it.
Don, any last words for our audience?
Sure, yeah. Well, first, if you want to learn more about remote work, I would highly recommend Zapier. Zapier is they have a very comprehensive guide for remote work. So search Google for Zapier remote work. Very good. Second, for companies who are looking at the potential for doing remote work, it's worth mentioning that you can save a lot of money if you transition fully into that. You don't need to have a physical office, or maybe downsize your physical office and pay a much more significantly less lease or rent. And the cost of the tools that you'll be spending will be, like, for example, so Coco, for example, I was looking at the numbers, and it would seem for our team, we would bring it down to around, say, maybe about a little more than 3,000 pesos per month per person. And that includes meeting twice a month in person with food catered, right? And also with an internet allowance and all the costs of the tools to be able to work remotely, versus a physical office where we're looking anywhere from around 5,000 to 9,000 pesos per month per person. And for us, and if you just looked at the numbers, it might make sense to just really commit fully to remote, like, forever. But that's still something we'll figure out as we learn more about our company.
Dre, any last words for our audience regarding how to enhance work from home?
So my slides a while ago were basically those are old slides. I edited them to be fit for the enhanced quarantine situation. So if you're planning to like move from office-based work to remote work, there's so much things that I can tell you. We won't have enough time, so just send me a PM or use the contact us page on my website, and I will help you for free.
Yeah. How about Mark? Mark, I think you're on mute.
With Don's suggestion as well, another book I highly recommend, Rework, by the founders of Basecamp, actually is really, really good at this. Also, I guess the best thing I will always remind people who are going into remote work, or these companies going into remote work, or teams going into remote work, don't forget culture. So one thing that I've learned as well, looking at other teams, is remember to have some downtime that you can still do with your team, even when you're completely remote. Set up a Jackbox party or remote D&D or whatever, because it helps.
All right. Ferds, last but not least.
Okay, so again, as what Aldrich did mention and what I shared earlier is the real concern for clients or people who did hire you is, are you working and are you delivering what I need for the job essentially. So mostly, yeah, it's more on over communicate, and then when you need to deliver, always say if you are like, I'm almost done, something like that, but I would need to be doing something like this, and I'll be able to deliver it in a bit. So that's how you over communicate, right? But yeah, be sure that when you promise to deliver, you will deliver, because that's the ending in every work from home is when you put up a result from working for all of that time that they can't watch you, or essentially even if they are you are visible from a chat group, it doesn't really equates to being productive at all. So yeah, technically at the end, it's your deliverables that's gonna matter if you're actually productive or not. So just over communicate if you can't deliver. But
I think you. Oh, okay. I almost thought you. I think you got cut there. But to the rest of the panel and everyone here, thank you so much for your questions and for contributing over to what we are learning so far on how to enhance our experience in working remotely, and working from home. So just to share over again, for our partner, Frontline Feeders PH. So we're still having our channels to provide over the donations up until Sunday. So we'll close the link over by Sunday as to where you're providing over the donations, and we'll send them over to Frontline Feeders Philippines by then. If ever you can't provide over via PayPal, you can also go through their page and DM them for their methods on how to donate over via BPI, BDO, GCash, Paymaya, and other details. So going back again so far with our progress, as much as we didn't reach our target, still that 4,500 it will still do a lot on how we will be able to help our frontliners and help over in hoping that COVID will now be gone here. So that's all so far for what we have for Remote FFC, our first collab remote meetup together with UXPH and the Philippine Web Designers Organization. Again, I am Pierce Honota, and thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having us. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you for
everyone.
moderating.
Wait, before
Thank you so
everyone
much.
leaves,
Thank you for everyone who stayed.
yeah.
When's the next
I'll
one?
take a class photo. So I'll